I'd like to be remembered as unquestionably the best athlete at a period of time.
Robert DeCastella, age 26, Australian. Best marathon time, 2 hours, 8 minutes, 18 seconds.
And now, from KBMC, Eugene, Oregon, more delightful music on That Certain Sound. It's great to have you with us this Wednesday afternoon to enjoy the gospel music of KBMC.
I run because I want to be the best. And I want to be the best there ever was.
Alberto Salazar, age 24, American. Best marathon time, 2 hours, 8 minutes, and 13 seconds. 2 men, 1 ambition, to be the best there is. In the footsteps of a Greek who has been dead for nearly 2,500 years. Legend has it that after the Battle of Marathon, the warrior Phidippides ran to Athens with the news of a glorious victory. He paid with his life for this odyssey, collapsing and dying in the city marketplace after delivering the message. The date, 490 BC. Northern England, 1983. Fellow Australians Graham Clues and Robert DeCastella train in the sleet and snow of an English winter. They're here preparing for the first ever clash between DeCastella and Salazar. Not on this occasion in a marathon, but in the World Cross-Country Championships.
Not too bad at the wind behind. Or the snow behind. I don't know how the Tommy guys train when it gets as cold as this.
Gateshead, England. This year, an elite field of distance runners gathers for 6 miles of hills, mud, and lung-bursting cross-country racing. At the end of an intensive training program, race day.
I don't think that I'm brusque or rude. I just think that I concentrate on my race. I won't permit myself to be distracted by anybody or anything. And whether it's people wanting an autograph or maybe camera people or something like that wanting to film me, I'm just going to ignore them because it's come an hour or two before the race. I've got to concentrate on that race. I can't be interrupting my work, my warm-up or preparation for the race to sign autographs or to talk to people.
I find mentally I have to almost prepare myself for all of the pain or the effort that I'm going to apply in a race. If I just go out there without really preparing myself, it's sort of a shock to the system, and I think you probably can't get as much out of yourself as you can.
At Gateshead, I went into it, and I don't think I was as mentally prepared. I'd had a slight leg problem for 4 or 5 weeks before the race, and I was in a little doubt about how that leg was going to feel on that sort of course, because that was the sort of course which I'd heard it on originally. Ever since I was little, I've always had the desire to do everything as well as I possibly could. I used to compete against everybody and everything. I remember I'd be walking to the school bus with my brother, and I'd make up little games we could do on the way there, and I made everything into a competition. Everything to see who could be the best, and I think it's something that's carried through. Hey, did you
I was, I suppose, a little bit apprehensive going into the race. I had a fair bit of pressure on me and a lot of expectation in Australia. When I left, I think a lot of the people were expecting me to finish very high up there. I finished 6th 2 years ago and 10th last year in the same race. So I was hoping to maybe get up in the top 5 and with a little bit of luck maybe get a medal.
You're on now, Jack.
It's an incredibly tough race. It's probably the hardest and the most competitive race I think I've ever run in, because there are just so many very, very good athletes in the field. There are about 150 runners in total, and every country is sending 9 of its best distance runners. And there is just so much depth there.
Over this cross-country outing, a disappointing 4th for Alberto Salazar. And for Robert DeCastella, 6th place.
Well run.
I've always been good, and it's the only thing that I know. Although I've lost races, obviously, I've never done bad. I've never had a bad year. I've never had any bad races.
Incredibly tough first year. See you next time. Come on, now, I thought it was going to be hard. This is just a training run. No, not the kind as hard as this.
I'm not used to losing or to running bad, and I think it's a way of life to me.
I'd forgotten just how tough a race it was, and in retrospect now, I think I ran very well. I don't think I could have run any better on the day. I was very pleased to be competitive and at least have a shot.
I need it for doping control. Thank you.
I don't think of myself as a superstar. I think of myself as the best marathon runner in the world, but I don't dwell on that. I don't think that it makes me special in any other way. I think I'm good at that one thing, and I don't look at myself as being anything special. I had success right away when I started running. The first time I ever ran a race, I was in 8th grade. I was in junior high school, and I ran a high school junior varsity race. So it was for freshmen and sophomores in high school. And I won without any training. So my first race ever, I had the success, and already people were saying, this kid's going to be good. I think another motivation for me in my running, it's a motivation which has come about in the last few years, but I'm a born-again Christian, and I think that's something which really influences my running. I think when I first started running, it's always been just for myself, the determination to be the best. And I've realized that in itself, that shouldn't be the only reason, and that I should use my running in some manner to glorify God in some way.
Home now is Eugene, Oregon, where Alberto lives with his wife Molly and young son Antonio.
I'm gonna go out. I'll be back in about an hour, okay?
Okay. See ya.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think he's realizing that he doesn't have to be successful 24 hours a day to be happy. You know, if he fails at something that he's really tried to do a good job at, he can still come home and he's still a successful father, a successful husband, and that's where it counts.
Put your finger in your mouth.
Well, you put a Cheerio in. If I only knew Alberto through his press image and just seeing him race, I would think of him as a totally different person. And I certainly don't think I'd like that person, just because he comes across as just being very...
Family's privacy, and a lot of the media can't accept that, and they can't accept the fact that since I'm besieged by so many interview offers, I've got to say no sometimes, and they feel it's an insult when I tell them that I don't want to do an interview with them. So the next time they write an article, they mention my name, they get their chance for a little revenge, and they write about how ungrateful I am and unfriendly. As far as the bragging part, I think that I've just tried to be truthful and say before races what I actually think my chances of running a certain time are. And I don't call that bragging. I think that that's just, if I think I'm in shape to run 2:08 or 2:10 or whatever, then I'm going to say so.
The University of Oregon in Eugene, where Salazar's training program is conducted under the guidance of track and field coach Bill Dellinger.
When do you leave for Washington State?
We're leaving tomorrow morning.
I think a coach, to be truly effective, has got to understand his runner completely. I think that's one advantage I have with my coach. We've known each other for 6 or 7 years now, and we're very close, we're good friends, and I think he knows me as well as I know
I would
myself.
do him over on the Amazon. You know, I think you ought to wait. I looked at Alberto as being an individual with a fair amount of talent. And it was the burning desire to want to be great that has developed that talent. If I were to pick an individual to train, it wouldn't necessarily be the individual that has the greatest amount of talent. It would be the one that has the burning desire to want to succeed.
For 51 years, this village of San Vittore Alona in Milan, Italy, has been the site of one of the most unusual races in the world. The course takes the runners through a number of farmyards and through 5 flour mills, hence the name, the Cinque Mulini, the 5 mills. It is here that DeCastella continues his preparation for his clash in Rotterdam with Salazar, here in a place that has almost become a home away from home.
I've been running Cinque Mulini now for 5 or 6 years, and every year when I'm over in Europe I always try to run it because it is such an emotional, and there is so much atmosphere at this race. I just find it really enjoyable. It's a race that I've run all these years and I've never won it. And when you run in a race all that time, you really want to be able to win the race at some stage. I think the recognition that the crowd gives is very important for the top athlete. I think without the recognition, it would be very hard to almost justify the amount of training that you put in and the amount of dedication that you put in. Probably the person that's played the most important role in my career has been my coach, Pat Clohessy. I've known Pat since I was about 14 or 15 years of age when I went to Xavier. And since then, when I was really originally a fairly ordinary sort of a runner, I've grown with Pat and my performances have improved over those years.
I think his background's very important, his background at Xavier College, where he went to the school at 14. He developed gradually there. He always enjoyed his running. I think that's something to be that distinguishes Rob from other athletes. He enjoyed his running. He never found it, drudgery on the way up. In fact, he used to say to me if he didn't enjoy his running, he'd give it away, and I always remembered that.
I think to achieve anything, you've got to be prepared to forego a little bit of pain, or you've got to be prepared to, knuckle down and guts it out. Doesn't matter what it is, you've got to be prepared to make certain sacrifices. If you don't ever push yourself, you'll never know what you can do. Being the best, I think, is important from the point of view that, it's nice to have a goal, and being the best is a great goal to have. But to me, it's more important to, I think, do my best rather than being the best.
At home, Rob DeCastella is able to share the pressures and problems with his wife, Gayleen, a former cross-country champion herself.
Supposed to put it in a pot, not on the stove.
I get a lot of motivation and encouragement from Gayleen. It's very important for me to have somebody to talk to who understands running, especially when you're travelling, when you're at home. Gayleen is incredibly supportive to everything that I do. A lot of people don't understand why I place so much importance and why I sacrifice so much for my running. Gayleen not only understands, but encourages me to do it.
You look like you could feed an army.
Robert doesn't put an end point on anything that he does. He doesn't go into a race not believing or believing he can run 2.5 or 2.6 or 2.7. He goes into the race to run against his competitors, to run as well as he can, and usually to win. He doesn't limit himself psychologically, and I think that's where his strength comes from. Are you a smoker or a non-smoker, Mr. DeCastella?
Non-smoking, thanks.
Constant travel is a fact of life for world-class runners. But on this occasion, it's a pleasure trip to visit Rob's father, Rollet, in Melbourne.
My problem is the stiffness that I get in the upper, not so much the quads as higher up in the adductors.
The elder DeCastella is no stranger to marathons himself. 7 years ago, he suffered a heart attack that could have left him a semi-invalid. Instead, he embarked on a regime of diet and running. He is currently preparing for his 18th marathon at the age of 58.
I don't know, when you see, even some of the top guys Salazar's knee lift is just so low.
Yeah.
Dad and I are very different in a lot of ways. Sure, I've probably got similar attitudes or similar beliefs as what my father has. I think we're both very intensive people. I would call him almost a perfectionist when it comes to just about anything that he sets his mind on.
It's a matter of, I suppose, adopting the right lifestyle, fitting it in with everything else, particularly in the early stages, and being able to organise oneself and motivate oneself to enjoy the running. At the same time, I think that's very important. I run for a number of reasons. Partly because I like to set the example to younger people that they should continue to run. As the years go by, it's just as important as it is for the younger people, perhaps more so.
Unlike most top runners, DeCastella finds time in his training schedule to work. He is employed as a biophysicist at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra.
I work in the sports science lab because I enjoy working with athletes, because working with the instrumentation and a little bit of science interests me. It's the type of thing that I enjoy doing.
On this occasion, it is DeCastella himself who is the subject of the research, conducted by Dr. Dick Telford, coordinator of sports sciences at the Institute.
Okay.
Yep.
DeCastella is on record as having said that running is simply a matter of putting one foot in front of the other and then alternating them as quickly as possible. On a treadmill at the Institute, he runs 5-minute miles back to back, while sophisticated instruments gather data on body functions. Computers measure the critical capacity to consume oxygen and evaluate the production of carbon dioxide and its relationship to the runner's arch enemy, lactic acid.
Heart rate now is 168 at 2 degrees, and the VO2 is 64. You're running at 5-minute mile pace. Keep it going. Heart rate's around the 180. Keep at it. It's over 70 mils per kilogram. Been going 9 minutes, a little bit longer if you can.
The human body can be described as a machine composed of muscles and tendons on a framework of bones. The fuel system is a combination of carbohydrates and body fats. The former stored as glycogen in the large muscles of the body, especially in the legs. The muscles can utilize glycogen without oxygen, but this anaerobic stage lasts only for a few minutes, producing lactic acid. Lactic acid paralyzes muscles and causes the crippling fatigue that follows sudden, rapid activity. When an athlete reaches this anaerobic stage towards the end of a run, it's like hitting a wall of fatigue and pain. Elite runners develop their ability to absorb and pump oxygen through their system by training for hours each day, year after year. Aerobic, or oxygen-enriched energy conversion, is the only way the human body can keep running for the grueling 2 hours plus required for a marathon race. While running 26 miles at a 5-minute mile pace, the heart rate will climb from 40 to 170 beats per minute as it pumps over 30 liters of blood through the body every 60 seconds. With each step, 400 kilograms of force has to be absorbed by the bones and sinews of legs and feet. And there are 40,000 steps in the 26 miles, 385 yards of the marathon. Sports scientists like Telford report that DeCastella's ability to consume oxygen by itself puts him in the super athlete class. The Commonwealth Games gold medalist consumes oxygen with twice the efficiency of the average mortal and scores 20 to 30% higher than other athletes tested at the Institute. The tale that technology tells is the same in Eugene, Oregon. Like DeCastella, Boston Marathon winner Alberto Salazar has selected his parents carefully, then developed his inherited gifts through year after year of consistent toil. The machines have had their say. Now it's DeCastella and Salazar's turn at Rotterdam.
Welcome to Rotterdam, city with the biggest ports all over the world. On April 9, the third International Rotterdam Marathon shall take place. Marathon shall start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, while 5 minutes later, a fun run, reaching the 15K, starts at almost the same place on the Koolsingel. Finish for the runners of both races shall also be on the Koolsingel, in the center of the city, in front of the town hall, where we are meeting each other at this moment. Welcome to this official press conference at City Hall, Town Hall of Rotterdam.
Considering the fact that you run so few marathon races in your careers, have you chosen Rotterdam for a particular purpose? Is it a fast track?
For several reasons, I've chosen to run here. Probably the most important being that Alberto is running here as well.
I guess just the main reason I'm running here is because Robert's here. And I have the fastest time in the world for a point-to-point course, and Robert has the fastest time in the world for a loop course. So I think if both of us can run well here, we're going to know who is the fastest overall. So I'm really looking forward to that challenge, and I just hope that we can be a little lucky and have good weather on Saturday. And I think if we have good weather, we'll both have a good chance of running under 2:08.
Jack, I'm making the interview.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm good.
Good.
How do you do? I'm good.
Southend. My friend, Richard.
So we are collecting our things, and then we would like to make the interview on the hill, when it's possible.
On the hill.
It's a very beautiful sight.
Yeah? Okay.
Or a dune, but
we're right back.
We call it the hill.
The difference between the two of you in best times is only 4 seconds. Not much.
No, it isn't. Not very much at all.
How is it possible that you meet for the first time? Did you run away from each other?
No, it's just we haven't run that. Neither of us has run that many marathons, so it's just the first time that everything's worked out where we can run at the same place.
I think the marathon here in Rotterdam is going to be one of the most competitive and intensive marathons that it has ever been staged outside of the Olympics. It's a very, very good field, and it's going to be a very fast race, and I think we can all contribute towards a new world record time with a bit of luck. Hi.
Hi.
How's it going? Yeah.
Both getting better, but he's just really cranky right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Off the schedule, so, I guess sometimes he
sleeping
feels
during the
tired
day
and stuff, and then...
We're not letting him sleep during the day, that's the problem. Do you want to?
Had your hands full out there before?
Yeah.
And Molly went out for a run?
Yeah, finally I brought him into the room, he just yelled the whole time.
It's good for his lungs.
Yeah.
That's
Making
right.
a good distance run at home.
I'll be an opera singer.
No, marathon runner.
I know that.
Poor kid. Doesn't know what he's in for.
I was asked if I wanted to stay at the same hotel with Robert here prior to the race, and I said, sure, that's fine. In fact, I'd enjoy it, and I'm sure he feels the same way. It's a good chance to talk, and meet each other.
Okay, we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
There's some time for socializing, but not much. It's back to the business at hand, with race day fast approaching.
You have to really want to run to succeed, I think. I decided years ago that this is what I wanted to do, and I'm not really prepared to let anything stop me. I think running is a fairly simplistic activity or sport, because I think all you really have to do is be prepared to put in the work, and provided you know what the right work is, provided you've got a good advisor or a good coach directing you, then I think it's just a simple matter that you're going to succeed.
I've trained very hard and very consistently for the last 4 or 5 years. I think it's harder than anybody that I know of in terms of the quality and the consistency that I've had. But also I think I have a very good coach, and I believe in myself and I'm confident. And I think when you add all those 3 factors together, you're going to have success.
11, 12, 13. I think the marathon holds an incredible, almost a mystique about it, because it draws together so many variables, and the athletes that run it, first of all, have to commit themselves totally to their training and preparation. They have to put in incredible mileage and incredible training just to prepare themselves. You're mentally preparing yourself for the period in the race where you are physically and mentally exhausted. You say, you know, will I guts it out? Will I keep the pressure on? Or will I back off a little bit? And you always have to sort of mentally be aware that I'm going to get to a stage like that in a race, so that when you do get there, it's not a surprise, or it's something that you've been waiting for and expecting.
A lot of people apply a sort of mystical quality to the marathon, where even if you think you're ready for it, that something may happen in that race and you may not run well anyways. And I think there's always that chance, but I think a lot of people run into trouble when they run the marathon because they're going into it scared already. Set out at a pretty good pace. It wasn't too fast. It was a little bit faster than the pace that we wanted to run. We wanted to try and run 3:10 per kilometer, and the first kilometer was probably about 3:05, and every 5K after that we were supposed to be trying to run about 15:10, and we were running about 15 minutes for the first 20K or so, so we were a little bit faster.
All of the traffic and the crowd control wasn't really very good. It was very difficult to continue and maintain your concentration when there's so much happening around you. But I think that's what you have to be able to do. You have to be very single-minded and almost block out every other thing from your mind and just concentrate on what you're doing. And as a result, you know, I can't really remember any stage being flustered or being concerned about the traffic or the crowd, although there were certainly stages in the race where they really interfered. Once or twice we had to actually physically charge our way through the crowd to get back onto the course.
You're out there and you're trying to beat each other, but at the same time you feel empathy with the other runners because you're all going through the same thing. It is sort of a brotherhood, and you pass the water bottle back and forth, and it's a good feeling, to know that even though you're trying to compete against somebody hard, at the same time you kind of want him to do good also.
Sure, you probably have to push yourself or be prepared to push yourself through barriers of pain. The biggest pain that you have to try and work yourself through is just the incredible weariness and the incredible fatigue that sort of envelopes you like a cloud. You know, it's like one of those dreams where you're moving in slow motion and everything else is going past at normal speed and you just can't keep up, and you know, you feel like you're in molasses.
Hey jongens, even stil zitten! Hey, blijf even zitten, blijf even zitten!
About the halfway point, the guy who had been setting the pace dropped back, and I think he dropped out of the race. And I was still feeling good at that stage in the race, and yet I knew that if somebody didn't start to press very soon, that we weren't going to have a chance of getting the record, because we were already slower than record pace by about 20 seconds at that point.
I think you really need to concentrate on achieving little goals. You certainly, I don't feel, should become totally introverted and draw within yourself during the race, because I think you dwell on little things such as, you know, how your feet are, if you're losing a toenail or you've got a blister or you've got a stitch or you know, your muscles are sore or something. You've got to just, while you've got to monitor those things, you can't afford to let them become too dominant a feeling. Alberto seemed really very intense, and he almost seemed, you know, almost trance-like at some stages during the race. He was almost totally withdrawing within himself, whereas I was just trying to relax, mentally and physically.
Robert started pressing the pace with about 5 miles to go or so, and with probably a little less than 4 miles to go, he really started to accelerate. And up to that point, it felt like it was starting to strain me a bit, but at the same time, I thought that I'd be able to stay up. There was only 3 or 4 miles to go, but then he really picked it up, and he really sprinted up a hill, and he just kept going after that. And I went with him for about a half mile or so, and I was waiting for him to slow down, but I knew at that point that if they didn't slow down, there was no way I could keep up. So I was just hoping they were going to slow down, but unfortunately they didn't, and they started to pull away. And at that point, a lot of things ran through my head, because in the last 2 or 3 years, nobody's ever pulled away from me during the race. It's only been at the very finish, you know, in the last quarter mile or so, that anyone's ever pulled away from me. And so I knew I was in trouble.
It wasn't until several kilometres, or 2 or 3 kilometres later, that I realised that we'd broken away, Lopez and I, and we were the only 2 left. Everybody else had been dropped off.
There was no way that I could have kept up. There's absolutely no way. The last 3 miles, I just fell back, and even though I've run almost 2 minutes faster on that day, there was no way that I could have run any faster, you know, or that I could have stayed up with DeCastella and Lopes. I knew that it was over, that there was no way I was going to catch him.
But that whole last 5 kilometres, he was right on my shoulder or running right by my side. I was just trying everything to get rid of him, and he was just hanging there almost like a shadow. He wasn't prepared to take the lead. Even once or twice I eased the pace back to try and get him to do some leading, and he just eased back too. And I wasn't sure whether he was tired, whether he was struggling a little bit, and he was grateful that the pace had slowed, or whether he was just super confident that he'd be able to kick past me at the finish over the last 100 metres or so. 1,000 metres to go, and he was still there, and I was picking the pace up more and more. 500 metres to go, and he was still there, and I was saying, crikey, is he going to just sprint off and leave me like a rocket, or is it going to be neck and neck right down to the line, or what? With about only a couple of hundred metres to go, I just sensed that he'd just lost that little bit of contact that he had with me. And as soon as I sensed that, I really picked up and I really put everything I had into it. Even as I crossed the finish line, I didn't know where he was.
Was it 2:39?
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I know. What was the last 5K?
You're under 15 minutes for 5Ks between 35 and 40.
It felt so slow, it really did.
Slow.
It really felt slow. Okay. Just cruising. Really was. Fighting the diarrhea. Okay, we must go, Rob.
Push me.
Okay. Okay, Rob. How many toes are killing me? Yeah, sorry.
The time, 2 hours, 8 minutes and 37 seconds. 24 seconds off the coveted world mark. What DeCastella did not yet know was that after running the first 25 miles, 385 yards of the marathon, he covered the final mile in an incredible 4 minutes and 31 seconds.
Talk about it. That race.
Hey, hello! Okay, man.
Both attacked. Well, he was still there. Yeah, we were both together with 500 metres to go, and then I really tried to just kick as flat out as I could. And I didn't know where he was. I thought he was right behind me all the way. Yeah?
Good mentally. He was getting a big old head.
Hoping that the fatigue had built up in his legs more than it had in mine, and I would have the strength to finish on faster than he did over the last several hundred metres.
I think it's probably one of the best things for him because he has to lose some time, and now it's out of the way, and now he can just concentrate on doing the best he can. I know he's really hungry now for the Olympics.
Just look after yourself. Yeah. Just settle down.
Oh, yeah. All right. Good for me. The year to go.
It takes a lot of pressure off them. Yeah. It must be really hard for him to stay.
Two men, one ambition. To be the best there is. Robert DeCastella has beaten the seemingly invincible Alberto Salazar on the day. There is another day on the horizon, in Los Angeles, at the Olympics. The quest for gold.
On your day. It's certainly very similar to an obsession. I think an obsession is something that you just keep on doing and doing and doing. And running is similar to that for me. It's just something that I want to just keep on doing and keep on achieving, and I really don't know when I'll stop. Probably when it stops being an obsession.
He's got less than 30 seconds to go to make it. The clock is in sight.
He is driving his arm.
He's got 30 seconds left for a world record performance.
He's gonna do it. He's gonna get it. He's gonna do it.
A new world record.
He's gonna do it.
2:08:13, the New York City Marathon.
In the world of running, one event stands above all others. It is the ultimate test of mind and body. It is called the marathon. Each year, thousands of runners from all over the world enter these torturous 26-mile races. The prevailing thought in the mind of most is simply survival. But Alberto Salazar ran this event not merely to survive, but to win. In 1980, Salazar shocked the running world by winning the New York City Marathon, his first attempt in a marathon. He went on to set a world record and established himself as one of the most dominant distance runners of all time. At the La Costa Hotel and Spa in Carlsbad, California, Greatest Sports Legends host Steve Garvey spoke with Alberto about his career.
Alberto, you're a famous marathoner, but originally you were a 10,000 meter man.
Right. I think that a lot of the top marathoners nowadays are going the same route. It's being found that you run best in the marathon if you've prepared yourself for years beforehand in shorter events like the 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters. And this is true actually in all the running events. Your best 5,000 meter runners are now runners who were milers before that and have moved up. Your best 10,000 meter runners are ex-5,000 meter runners. You're always better off having the speed in your legs and then moving up, just adding the extra strength work and moving up a distance than vice versa. So I really concentrated on the 5,000 and 10,000 meters in the early part of my career because my coach and myself, we both thought that it was going to be better for me in the long run. Even though the marathon was going to be my best event, we knew that that would be where my strengths would be most evident. We knew that I still had to concentrate on the shorter events, get all the speed that I could, and then move up, and then I'd have that advantage.
Over 14,000 runners entered the 1980 New York City Marathon. This would be Alberto Salazar's first attempt in a marathon event. Despite an obvious lack of experience, Alberto boldly predicted that he would win and that he would break the course record.
During that 1980 marathon, some of the critics unfortunately used the terms cocky and arrogant. Your comment about that?
They called me cocky and arrogant because I was naive and came out and said exactly what was on my mind. And they asked me how fast I thought I could run my first marathon. And I felt that because of the way my training had been going that I could run a 2:10. And when I said that, I had no idea how that was going to be received. And when I said 2:10, a lot of people almost burst out laughing, and they felt like it was almost a blasphemy that I dare to say I was going to run the fastest first marathon ever and that I could be competitive with runners like Bill Rogers in my first race ever. And yet that's what I honestly believed, and I just didn't see any reason to be overly humble and to say 2:15 when I really felt I was going to run 2:10.
The New York City Marathon begins on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge and winds its way through the streets of each of the city's 5 boroughs. It is truly an awesome sight. Alberto's pre-race strategy called for him to remain within striking distance of the leaders. After 15 miles, he was exactly where he wanted to be. 20 miles into the race, Alberto and Rodolfo Gomez left the pack and engaged in their own private duel. Eventually, Salazar's tremendous speed allowed him to pull away from Gomez. With the finish line in sight, Alberto realized that his predictions were about to become a reality. He had broken the course record by 28 seconds. He had run the fastest first marathon in history, a superhuman performance.
As soon as I finished, it was just a feeling of satisfaction, like I had believed that I was going to be a good marathoner, and I knew I could run a good one, but at the same time, you never know for sure until you actually go and do it. So it was good to be able to run one like that well my first time and to be able to say, yeah, you know, just like I thought, you know, this is going to be my race.
In order to succeed in the marathon, a runner must possess a superbly conditioned body and an unbreakable will. They must overcome the obstacles of pain and fatigue which inevitably occur.
To be a good marathoner, you have to learn to deal with pain, and the pain it's a different sort of pain than you get in other sports. It's more a gradual fatigue type of pain that starts to invade your whole body, and it's probably the same pain which any jogger or runner that goes out there, regardless of how good they are, feels. And the thing is, in the marathon, it's for a much longer distance, and usually marathoners or top ones have learned to push themselves harder and harder. So it's really the sort of pain which you've just got to learn to deal with that fatigue and that overall feeling of exhaustion, which makes you want to slow down or quit. But you just got to try and push through it. Got to have confidence that no matter how hard, how bad you feel and how hard the running is, that you're going to be able to pick it up at the end. And you get that confidence through your training. When you've simulated that feeling and those conditions enough in your training regimen, when it comes to that point in the race where you feel that same sort of fatigue and pain, you're going to have dealt with it before. And even though you may feel like you may have doubts in your mind, you may think, I can't keep it up, I'm going to have to slow down. You've done it before, and so you at least try and do it, and all of a sudden you surprise yourself that you're able to keep going.
The 1981 New York City Marathon. Once again, Alberto Salazar drew a great deal of attention to himself prior to the race by stating that he would win again and that he would also break the world record.
Did it put some personal pressure on you to make that prediction now?
Yeah, the thing was that I kind of said it without really realizing at the time what I was saying. You know, I said, well, yeah, I think I can run a minute and a half faster, and I didn't bother to figure out that that meant a 2:08.
The equation there.
Right, and once I'd said it, I wasn't going to back down because that's really what I felt. And yet, right away, I realized that, hey, you not only have to run a minute and a half faster, you have to break a world record now or you're going to look bad.
Could you feel the New York crowd pulling for you in '81?
Oh, definitely. I mean, New York crowd loves people that are confident and outspoken and so forth. And I think they like the idea that, you know, I had done it the year before after predicting I was going to do it. And they wanted to see me pull it off again. And you know, it's a great crowd for that. If you're ready and if you go out there and aren't scared to say what you really think, they're going to support you 100%.
Alberto began this race knowing that he would have to put forth the finest performance of his life to break a world record which had stood for 12 years. His pride and his word were at stake. Midway through the race, he seemed to be on his way to accomplishing exactly what he had predicted.
Graham started to slow a little over the next couple of miles, so I felt like I had to take the lead at that point and maintain the pace which was needed for the record. And Gomez ended up coming with me. We pulled away from Graham, And about the 16-mile point, Gomez started jumping into the lead. And he would get in front of me, but then he would slow down. And then I'd pass him, and he'd get in front of me again, slow down again. So finally, I just started getting angry because I knew that I had to break this record. And I couldn't afford to let this guy keep, slowing the pace down. So at about the 17-mile point, I decided I'd had enough, and I was going to really surge hard on him and just throw in a fast mile. So I ran the next mile fast, and later I was astonished to find out that I'd run about a 4:33 for that mile. And anyways, it finally got rid of Gomez.
Thousands of anxious fans gathered at the finish line awaiting the arrival of the first runner. Then, a lone figure appeared in the distance.
As soon as I finished it, it was just a great feeling of, having done exactly what I set out to do. And it was just the best feeling in the world to, have trained hard for something and have gone out there and said I was going to do it and to do it exactly the way I'd said. And, it was probably the best feeling I'd ever had in sports up to that point.
In the spring of 1982, Alberto Salazar entered the Boston Marathon for the first time in his career. He now attracted attention because everyone expected him to win. The pressure of being considered the favorite was also accompanied by temperatures which reached the 70s. These conditions turned the course into a withering test of every runner's spirit. For most of the race, Alberto trailed Dick Beardsley. Once again, he would have to push himself to the edge to prevail.
After about the halfway point, Beardsley and I started to pull away from everybody, and at that point, I think I was starting to feel the heat and not feeling too chipper, so I just started to hang on Beardsley's shoulder at that point. And I can remember going through Heartbreak Hill and just really feeling bad, but just telling myself over and over again that I was better than Beardsley and that I wouldn't let him pull away from me, and that all I had to do was stay close to him, and that as we got closer and closer to the finish of the race, I knew that my chances were going to go up and up.
Alberto refused to give up in this race. In one of Boston's most dramatic finishes, Alberto surged ahead of Beardsley during the final stretch to the finish line. In winning the race, Alberto had run the fastest Boston Marathon in history. The heat and the effects of his all-out effort finally took their toll once it was all over.
When I finished the race, they brought me down into a cold garage underneath the Prudential buildings, was like the medical area, and somehow that started my body in a cooling off process, which was strange on a hot day, and my body temperature ended up going down to 88 degrees. And only after they had given me a lot of fluid through intravenous tubes was my body able to readjust itself and my temperature rose back up.
Well, after 82 in Boston, you were the #1 marathoner in the world. How did that affect your personal life?
I wasn't really prepared for all the publicity and the demands which were going to be placed on me. I'm, I think, a relatively private person, and I just wasn't really comfortable with, all the media interest and all the people on the street asking for my autograph and stuff like that, and I just really wasn't prepared for it. And for a while there, I didn't even want to go out. I didn't want to go out to a restaurant or something because I felt embarrassed, or, I was aware of people staring, and I just would feel uncomfortable. So it was really hard on me for a while, but, after a while I grew to accept it, and, after a while I just, I can notice somebody looking at me, but it just doesn't bother me anymore.
Having gained worldwide notoriety and the title King of the Marathon, Alberto Salazar sought his third straight victory in the New York City Marathon in 1982. As always, Alberto took his place among the leaders, never allowing them to relax for one moment. When a convoy of escort vehicles passed the 20-mile point in the race, it revealed Alberto and his old rival, Rodolfo Gomez. Gomez had vowed that he would not allow Salazar to win as he had in 1980.
He's going to do it. It's Alberto. He is going to win. He just looked over his shoulder. But there's Gomez. Boy, he's right on it. He's going to put it away. What a gutty race again. How can he do it every time? No one, Lee, doesn't get away with anything. Here comes the time. Alberto Salazar up 2 and across. 2:09.27 out of victory. Gomez 31. 2:09.27. 2:09.31. Alberto, death and destruction. Gomez saying, what do I got to do? Oh, my God.
Salazar's victory made his marathon record a perfect 4 for 4. Alberto was the undeniable favorite among the New York fans. They were drawn to this bold young runner who possessed the courage and the ability to back up every one of his statements. It was a proud day for the entire Salazar family. 8-week-old Antonio joined his father on the victory stand. On this day, his father was presented with a royal award for a supreme performance. Alberto Salazar had achieved a great deal during his career, yet he did not own an Olympic medal. In 1984, Alberto entered the U.S. Olympic marathon trials. He was hoping to earn a place on the team and the chance to win a medal in the upcoming Olympic Games. Alberto was also trying to cope with his own health problems. He had developed a form of anemia, which greatly reduced his strength. Once in competition, however, Alberto knew one thing: you ran until you had absolutely nothing left. Although Alberto may have appeared brash at times, one could not help admiring his tenacity, his willingness to go beyond the breaking point to achieve greatness. Alberto would not win this race, but he did qualify for the Olympic team. His dreams of Olympic glory were shattered when he finished 15th in Los Angeles.
Alberto, you've accomplished so much, yet you've never won a gold medal. Does that bother you in any way?
Well, yeah, I'd like to run well in the Olympics. You know, the gold medal is an elusive thing. I'm going to have a lot of enjoyment or a lot of fond memories of my running, whether or not I win a gold medal. It's something which I'm still going to try for, and yet, you know, I guess I've matured enough and learned enough through the years that I realize that sometimes you're not going to get everything that you want. And the tough thing about the gold medal is that there's so much luck involved. It's, you know, on that one day, being at your best, you know, when everybody else is at their best. So it's hard to really bank on it, but, you know, I think I'll have as much chance as anybody else does.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we all look forward to the continuance of a great career from an all-time great marathoner.
Well, thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
training for this finish line in August. But today, the road to Olympic gold heads through Phoenix along the route of the international 10-kilometer run. The favorite, Alberto Salazar, America's hope for Olympic gold in the marathon. Last year, he set a new record here in Phoenix, but since then, failure. Rotterdam, he loses the first marathon of his life, beaten by Australia's Rob DeCastella. Helsinki, an injured Salazar, finishes last in the World Championship 10,000 meters. Japan, another fifth-place finish, another marathon loss. But now, Salazar says he's ready to make a comeback. And today, he tries to prove it, taking on Rob DeCastella and a world-class field in the Phoenix International 10-kilometer run. Hi again, everybody. I'm Jim Kelly. The 10K, 10 kilometers, the classic road racing distance. 6.2 miles, the world record, 27 minutes, 48 seconds. And we could well be on world record time here today. Ideal weather conditions, virtually no wind. Working with us, four-time Boston, four-time New York Marathon champion Bill Rogers. Bill, we've got a great 1-2 duel, Alberto Salazar and Rob DeCastella.
Right, Jim. Today we have the two best marathoners in the world, the fastest marathoners in the world. DeCastella of Australia and Alberto Salazar of the United States. Less than a year ago, Alberto Salazar lost the marathon to DeCastella. I think he lost a little confidence in that race. Today's race is very important for Alberto to win. He's got to win, defeat DeCastella, and set himself up for the Olympic marathon coming up in a few months.
So for Salazar, today's race a key to his comeback. For DeCastella, a very important race psychologically against Alberto. And earlier, we asked each what this could mean looking down the road to Los Angeles.
Alberto, as far as I'm concerned, would be expected to beat me over this shorter distance. And if I can manage to beat him, then I think I've got a big psychological advantage, because I feel if I'm running well over this short distance, it means that I'm running very well over the long distance.
I'm not saying that I'm going to win in L.A. I've learned this last year that sometimes no matter how much you want something, you're not going to get it. There's a lot of luck involved, and there's a lot of other good runners out there that want it too. But, I want to show people that they're wrong if they think that I'm just going to sit back and on my butt and let DeCastella and Seiko or any of these other guys just come in here and waltz off with a gold medal without any fight. And that's the only thing I'll promise, is that I'm going to get in there and give them a fight like they've never had before. And right here is a good place to start. And, I'd really like to I'd love to have it just me and DeCastella coming down the stretch here.
But Bill Rogers, this Phoenix 10K is anything but a two-man race.
That's right. There are a lot of high-quality Olympic-level contenders. One is Mike Musioki, who's aiming for his Olympic 10,000-meter team. He's got a lot of foot speed. So does John Tracy, a two-time world cross-country champion from Ireland. John also could outkick someone like Alberto, and Craig Virgin of the United States has been on our Olympic team at 10,000 meters. All these guys are specialists at this event. They've got a lot of speed.
All right, Bill, let's take a look at the 10-kilometer, the 6.2-mile course here in Phoenix. Weather conditions are absolutely ideal.
Okay, the course has about 4 or 5 turns in the first 2 miles, but then you hit these long straightaways where a runner can really unwind, particularly the downhill finish for the last 2 miles, a world record potential here.
And we talked about the weather, virtually no wind. It should help the runners, maybe a world record.
That's important on this kind of a course, to have no wind, because then they can run unimpeded the whole way.
There's Alberto Salazar in the center of the screen as they are just about set to start. The outstanding field, over 4,000 runners here in the Phoenix 10K. And our celebrity starter, Mary Decker, the world record holder, just seconds away from the start, Bill Rogers. What goes through the mind of a runner before the beginning?
You can see they're all looking off to the side, trying to keep their eyes up on who's got the gun. They're trying to keep alert to that. There's a lot of noise, the crowd talking. You want to get a good position. There's a lot of adrenaline going through your body. I don't know what that guy was up to, but anything can kind of happen at a road race sometimes. And here, fortunately, it's a very wide start. It's pretty spread out. You can tell it's very quick. They're keeping pace with these motorcycles pretty good.
The beginning, obviously, is a cavalry charge. What dangers are there for the runners at the beginning of a race?
There's a couple of dangers. One is that you're starting too fast. The excitement of the race gets you carried away, and the first mile might take you out too fast. There's DeCastella, number 2. Salazar, number 1, just behind number 43, Bari, Tanzania.
That's Zach Bari, number 43, and over on the left side of the screen is Desmond O'Connor, both running very easily as this Phoenix 10-kilometer race is underway. 4,000 runners. There's a long way to go, over 6 miles from the finish, and Rob DeCastella, certainly the co-favorite, along with Alberto Salazar, number 2, moving up now, and he takes over the lead. So 6 miles to the finish. We're underway in Phoenix, and there's your leaderboard. Past the halfway mark of the Phoenix International 10-kilometer run, and the surprising story, the 2 co-leaders, Zach Baree out of Tanzania, Englishman Mark Scruton. They have opened up about a 15-yard lead now, Bill Rogers, over Rob DeCastella, running a very strong third, and it looks like Alberto Salazar in fourth is beginning to tire.
Yeah, I think he seems to be gasping for air a little, and that's unusual. At this stage of the race, usually Alberto's in command, starting to put the pressure on the other runners instead of it happening to him.
Australia's Ironman, Rob DeCastella, running very strongly, very confidently right now. His best personal time in the 10 kilometers is 28:02. Alberto Salazar in the 4th spot. His best time here in Phoenix a year ago, an American record, 28:01. Now, DeCastella has said he does not view this as a personal showdown with Alberto Salazar, but for Alberto, this is a big rematch. He's put a lot of pressure on himself.
I've got to run well here if I'm going to keep my confidence that I can train myself and know when I'm going to run well.
Strength and a self-confidence bordering on arrogance have been Alberto's trademark since he burst on the road running scene with a win in his very first marathon. He stood alone, unchallenged.
I'm not going to worry about any one particular guy. I mean, they're all so good that if you start looking at the other runners and thinking about how good they are, you may forget how good you are.
But in the last year, Alberto Salazar has been eclipsed by first Rob DeCastella and then Japan's great marathoner Seiko. Salazar has finally found his confidence in himself severely tested.
I just got to realize that no matter how bad last year may have looked, I am still the same runner that I was the year before last year, that was 2 years ago, perhaps even better. And so I've done all the training, but now it's the time to go out and race, and there's going to be a point in this race where there's going to be a moment of truth, and I'm just going to have to say to myself, well, you know, do you have it or don't you right now?
And Bill Rogers, that moment might soon be at hand. DeCastella in 3rd spot. Alberto Salazar running 4th as they approach the 4-mile mark, and we're still on a world record pace. Salazar not closing the gap.
I think Alberto is coming. It's do or die time. Alberto is strongest at this point of the race, at the 4-mile mark, in this territory of the race. He's got to make his move. He's putting the pressure on DeCastella. DeCastella watches him go by, but he won't drop back. He'll hang on him. You've got to maintain contact in distance racing. That's the most important thing.
In the 10-kilometer race, Alberto Salazar running 3rd, DeCastella 4th right now. And Salazar's strategy really begins after the 4-mile mark with 2.2 miles left to go. And as you look at the map, that's just about at this spot on the racetrack. You look at Zach Baree along with Mark Scruton, and the split still Bill Rogers on world record time. Baree makes the turn. He's headed home. Here comes DeCastella and Salazar. Salazar in the 3rd spot. DeCastella is 4th. 2.2 miles to the finish.
This is where Alberto has always succeeded in 10-kilometer road racing, I think, at this point where he's most toughest. He's making his move. You see Scruton weakening.
DeCastella running 4th, looking at Salazar in the 3rd spot now. Alberto has said no excuses. He must run well. He wants to finish no worse than 3rd. And look at DeCastella pulled dead even now, and he looks like he's about to take over the 3rd spot. DeCastella, Australia's Ironman, and Salazar looks a little tired.
He looks very tired, and DeCastella went by him decisively, and that's important road racing. Psychologically, this is going to hurt Alberto a little bit. DeCastella is now keying on Scruton.
And so is Zach Baree. He's opened up for the first time a clear lead over Scruton. Zach Baree, coming from that great tradition of African runners taking over the lead. Scruton looks like he's slipping, Bill Rogers, so it looks right now like DeCastella's the only one with a chance to catch Baree.
I think DeCastella, he's got the momentum going for him. We know how strong he is. It's just a matter if he can take advantage of this downhill slide, the incentive of seeing Scruton drop off, and whether or not Baree can hold on.
It's the biggest lead of the day for Zach Baree out of Tanzania. He has opened up that huge lead now over Mark Scruton. DeCastella still running very strongly in the 3rd spot. Can anybody catch Zach Baree? We'll find out. They're still on world record time, 1.5 miles to go. Into the home stretch, and Zach Baree, who's led this Phoenix International 10K almost the whole way, has finally been caught by Australian Rob DeCastella. Rob running a very sound 3rd almost the entire race, now dead even with the leader, and dropping to a disappointing 6th, Bill Rogers, the pre-race favorite, Alberto Salazar.
Alberto's looking very tired. This is a real surprise for him to be this far back at the end of a 10K race. And with a slight downhill here, you can see they're still on world record pace, and there's potential for that to happen.
Stride for stride together. DeCastella on the outside. Zach Barry on the inside, and now he starts to make a move and starts to pull ahead of DeCastella. And this is a remarkable kick by Zach Barry, considering the fact that he really has not had a very good training season, only training 6 miles per day after suffering that foot injury to the right foot back in January in the Millrose game.
I can't understand how he can run this kind of quality of a race with an injury recently.
Of course, he's coming off a half-marathon win 3 weeks ago, and look at him open up that lead over Rob DeCastella. It's simply a two-man race, and the question now, can DeCastella catch him? A slight downhill trend of the course coming in for the final kick.
DeCastella is strong, but the final few hundred yards, I don't know if he can catch this guy.
And there, some question marks have to be going through Alberto Salazar's mind now. He said before the race he would have to remember that he was as good as he is now as he was 2 years ago, if not better. And for Salazar, it could be back to the drawing board. Right now, for Zach Barry, it's on to the tape. He looks over that left shoulder, checking, looking behind him for DeCastella now. How much does your body hurt at this point?
I think it's a matter of looking for the finish line. You just try to forget everything. If someone's in front of you, you're just keying on him, and that's what Rob's trying to do, just trying to get back into contact.
Zach Barry, out of that great tradition of African runners that arrive on the scene unannounced. I asked DeCastella about the African runners before the race, and he said, crikey, there are so many good ones around. How do you keep track of them? Right now, he is tracking Zach Barry.
Barry is nervous. He's looking behind him about every 3 seconds. Alberto is really struggling here. He almost looks like he's running a marathon.
The world record time on the left, the race time on the right, that 6-mile run in 4:20. They're definitely still on a world record pace. Zach Barry pushing himself now.
This is a terrific finish. We wouldn't have this unless DeCastella, using his marathoner's perseverance, forcing him all the way to the tape. Barry is kicking like a sprinter now, really driving with his arms, looking behind every few seconds. DeCastella not letting up a bit, though.
The pace truck and the timer pulling Zach Barry toward the finish line, being pushed by that man, Rob DeCastella. Seconds away now. It could be a new world record for Zach Barry in the 10K. And there it is, a new world record by Zach Barry by a full 5 seconds. Rob DeCastella finishes up second, and that's a new personal best for Rob in the 10 kilometers. Mark Strutton of England finishes up third. He just now crosses the finish line. And way back in the pack, the pre-race favorite finishing up a disappointing 8th. Here he comes, Alberto Salazar.
A very tough race for Alberto, who couldn't live up to his own pre-race hopes.
He expected, he demanded of himself a finish no worse than third. He finished a disappointing 8th. For Alberto, it has to be back to the drawing board. With our winner, John Dockery.
27:43.
That's fast enough.
Is that all you can say? It's fast, a world record.
Is it a world record?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Good.
So you're as surprised as a lot of other people.
Yeah.
You did all the work. Bill Rogers, our expert analyst, used words like blister and smoke. World record pace. Did you know you were on a pace like that?
No, I didn't know. I was just running, just going.
And a good effort, too, for the man who finished up second, Rob DeCastella. His nickname is Tree. He's known as the Unflappable One. He's Australia's Iron Man. He was second in this Phoenix International 10-kilometer off the world record of Zach Barry.
Seemed very much in control. I mean, he'd sort of open up a bit of a lead, and then I'd sort of peg him back, and then he'd put in another surge, and I'd peg him back. So I think he was, running pretty strongly and pretty much within himself. And then over the last 400 metres or so, I tried to kick, and I just really couldn't sustain it. And he put in a surge and got away from me and went on to win. I think he's running very, very well, and I was very impressed by the way he ran.
And for this man, Alberto Salazar, disappointment and frustration. Bill Rogers, for a runner, what's it like when it's been over a year since you've run a good race?
Very tough mentally. I think Alberto's worried about the Olympics a little. He just needs a few more races, and I think he'll be fine.
Alberto, before the race, we talked, and you said that you felt you were prepared, you were ready, your training was going well, and the term I remember was there was no excuses.
Right.
What about today's race?
Well, there really are no excuses. I've got to be worried about what's going on with my racing, because I'm just not, my workouts have been as good as ever, and I'm just not running as well. And the only thing I can think of is just, it's got to be something other than my running, and it perhaps could be just my sleeping habits. Right now, last year and a half, I just haven't been able to sleep at night. I got to take a sleeping pill every night to go to sleep, and I used to be able to just go right to sleep. So I think it's something like that where I'm not recovering for some reason, and not resting, I'm under too much stress or something, I don't know.
So the Phoenix International 10-kilometer into the record books, and indeed a new world record for Zach Baree out of Tanzania and Texas at El Paso. He shaved 5 full seconds off the world mark. Australian Rob DeCastella was second. For the United States, Mark Kerp, the first American across the finish line. Alberto Salazar, a disappointing 8th. John Tracy was 11th, and Craig Virgin finished up 15th. For Bill Rogers and John Dockery, I'm Jim Kelly. So long from Phoenix.